So my name is Jack Sweeney and I'm the founder of JDS Strategists, and we are a direct-to-consumer strategy consultancy, and that is what we're going to be talking about today and for the other 3 sessions that we have over the next few months. So let's just start by being really clear on what direct-to-consumer is by looking back in history. And I remember as a child of the 90s, the Avon lady turning up at the door to sell my mother all things cosmetics. And that, by definition, was a direct-to-consumer channel. Avon decided deliberately not to sell via retailers and went direct to the consumer, but via traditional doorstep methods. Fast forward a decade, and probably the most famous case study we have for this is Apple. And Steve Jobs was famous for saying that he wanted to own and control the entire experience with customers, and thus wanted to open lots of Apple stores. And I think this is a picture of the first store back in 2000, 2001. There's now over 500 of these. And whilst this might not be what we associate direct to consumer with in the modern day, this again is very much a direct to consumer model, but using physical retail. But then fast forward another decade to sort of 2010, 2011, that was when the modern world of e-commerce and online direct to consumer really exploded as technology got better a lot faster. This allowed more brands and more businesses to use those platforms and channels to sell to customers. And alongside that, you also had the emergence of like modern world social media through Facebook. And Facebook were really the pioneers of using those social channels to reach consumers, initially organically, but now in more modern days, you have to pay for that through advertising. And to be even more specific, in more recent years, there are sort of 2 lenses that we tend to look at direct to consumer through at JDS, which is selling on your own branded website, and then also selling through marketplaces like Amazon and eBay. Now, obviously, both of those have been around a lot longer than a few years, but it's only really in the last half a decade or so that brands, particularly Amazon brands, have been looking at more as a channel to support a direct to consumer proposition, as opposed to selling into them as a vendor. And that's really where we're going to focus our attention today. It's in the modern day direct to consumer e-commerce space, and primarily via your own website. So the agenda for the next 20 minutes or so, we'll spend just a few of those talking about why direct to consumer is important, particularly in the current landscape we find ourselves in and how volatile the markets are right now. We'll then share with you the 5 most common mistakes that we find in new clients or prospects when we're talking to them, and also just some very simple what you can do to avoid them. And then finally, at a very high level, what should you do straight after this presentation? If you find yourself agreeing with or resonating with any of the points that I make in those 5 most common, or you feel like there's something that you've seen that means you need to do something, we'll give you some advice both for a medium and a long-term view, but also literally what you can go and do tomorrow, hopefully to help you sell a bit more from your own website. Right, let's start with why direct to consumer is so important, or why we believe at JDS it's so important to consumer product brands. And I must start with acknowledging the insanity that we are seeing in pretty much all categories and all markets at the moment. I wrote a thought piece titled I will leave that word out, is going on. I sent that out to all of our newsletter signups. We posted it on LinkedIn, and it had a really big response, actually, because it is a market like we've never seen, definitely not seen at JDS. And from people that we speak to day to day that have been in the market a lot longer, it's probably the most difficult they found it. And there are lots of reasons for that. I'm not going to go into each of these in detail, but I've put what we believe are the biggest 6 up. But the reason that I'm opening with this in this section is that you would be forgiven right now for thinking that maybe direct to consumer isn't right for you, and that the world of e-commerce isn't the right route for your brand. And actually, I'm even starting to see articles that are saying why you shouldn't sell direct to consumer. And if you You flip back 2 years ago, it was all about why you should be selling direct to consumer. It's very much the sentiment has shifted away from it because of some of the things that you see on the slide in front of you. But it's very important to just take a step back and get out of the media hysteria and look at the fundamentals. And there are two really important fundamentals that make direct to consumer a great channel and initiative for your business. And the first is customers over the long term are increasingly buying online. And hopefully you can see my cursor here, but you can see back into 2012, right up to the start of the pandemic, there was a steady increase in the total amount of retail sales transacting online. That's what this graph is showing. It's from the ONS. And then you can see this insane acceleration of that trend up to highs of about 37% of total retail transacted online back in Q1 2021. But that has slowed down somewhat as we forecasted, I think on a beta webinar last time. That has slowed down and come back down to levels closer to 25%. But putting the short-term volatility to one side, the trend is evidently clear, is that consumers want to buy online and are buying online more frequently than they have been historically for all the reasons around convenience and speed, and actually for lots of categories it's just a better experience. So that's the first fundamental. And there's just a few quotes here about why direct to consumer, or sorry, how customers view branded websites and their preference being to buy from the brand in the online space. But the second one is more internally focused, and it's a major benefit to your business. And the way that we group this list of benefits is it gives you more commercial control. This is really important, commercial control. It reduces your reliance on a really volatile retail landscape. You own the experience, albeit in the online space, for customers. So as from when they discover your brand to when they buy your brand, you're owning that experience. You're not leaving it to a third party, be that a marketplace or a retailer. You're capturing their data, which with all of the recent iOS 14 changes and what that's doing to social media marketing, it's probably one for another day, or maybe another a section in an upcoming direct to consumer webinar. But capturing data, first party data that you own, and then being able to use that for research insights and also remarketing is becoming increasingly important. You can use your direct to consumer channel to sell to customer groups that don't shop where you currently sell. So hypothetically, if you only sell into garden centers, that tends to be a very specific type of customer. But if your product is appealing to customers that don't shop in garden centers, then why not open up that channel and market to them? And then, of course, finally, you can test new products or new offers, new promotions. And then if they're successful, you can use that success story when you go to your retailers and use it to sell in to them there. And of course, finally, if you do direct to consumer right, in most categories for most brands, you will make more profit, period. You will make more profit if you do it right. So there is a real commercial benefit to doing this right from a P&L perspective. Okay, let's move on then to the 5 biggest mistakes that we find when we start talking to new brands. And the first, possibly surprisingly to some of you on today's webinar, is we're going to start with people. And this is the biggest mistake, at least from my perspective, that brands make in the world of direct to consumer. They start with websites and digital advertising and marketplaces and content and typically marketing and e-commerce stuff before actually making the decision who in the business is ultimately responsible and accountable for the performance of direct to consumer. So you go off and you start doing all of these tactical things before actually making the decision who is overseeing all of it. And that's a really, really important piece of the puzzle. Now, that person needs to be commercially adept, or in other terms, they need to be able to read and manage a P&L. They need to be really strong project managers because, as we're going to come on to, direct to consumer is more than just e-commerce, and it's more than just digital marketing. And whilst the person that's ultimately accountable doesn't need to be experts in all these different fields, they do need to be able to manage a cross-departmental team in your business. And ideally, they need to have some level of e-commerce experience. So direct to consumer, or your website more specifically, is a sales channel. So having someone that is experienced in that sales channel, of course, is beneficial. But note how I didn't make that the most important point at the top of the list. If they can learn that very quickly, if they have high aptitude, then it's not essential that they come with that experience. Actually, the 2 points above are more important. So just a very simple takeaway on this slide is make one person ultimately accountable for the performance of your direct to consumer channel. It is so, so important. It can't be the MD or the CEO, because they simply don't have the bandwidth and the time to do this. It needs to be someone, most likely someone fairly senior from either your sales or your marketing team, as it currently stands. And as we've mentioned already, because direct to consumer is such a broad, it's a sales channel, right? So it's a broad entity in its own right. It's not just one tactical discipline. This person needs to be able to oversee and manage all of these things and more that you see on the slide. Number 2, bad choices. This is probably the second. I've tried to do this in some form of order. This is probably the second biggest mistake that we see made, usually because decisions have been rushed, particularly in the last 2 years with COVID. If you weren't selling direct to consumer, or you weren't selling online and leveraging the e-commerce opportunity, you were way behind the curve, and thus you were rushing to catch up. And this led to some pretty bad decision making, a couple of which are here. So if you didn't have an e-commerce ready website, we know lots of businesses that just went and found the first web agency they could to build it, and then expected immediate results, and it all went unsurprisingly horribly wrong. Secondly, don't go live without understanding, analyzing, and adjusting for the impact on operations. So if you're a typical retail distributed brand that are shipping pallets in from your DC, or even shipping containers direct from China, you're suddenly going from a high volume model to a single pick, pack and ship model. It's very, very different. So are you going to do that yourself? So you're going to use a 3PL, a third party logistics provider. And then on top of that, you've got the increase and change in the type of inquiries your customer service team are going to get. And it's very easy to sit here with hindsight and go, oh, no one would make that mistake. But we see it happen all the time, that there is such a rush and honestly a misunderstanding of what direct to consumer actually entails, is that you just go on, you set the website up, you start selling, and then suddenly your operations, logistics, and customer service teams are going, what the hell is going on? Like we can't handle this type of volume, and ultimately the increase in volume. So that's really important. And then finally is over-investing, and often far too early, in digital advertising. And this is even more important right now because inflation, cost per click, CPC inflation through search engines like Google and on social media platforms like Facebook are at unprecedented highs. We've got clients that are paying 400-500 times more for the same keyword on Google versus last year, and at least that, if not more, for a click via Facebook advertising. So make sure that you get some of the other fundamentals in place first. We're going to come on to talk about this in a second, before spending thousands or even tens of thousands of pounds on digital advertising. It's not the golden bullet lots of agencies would have you believe. Lots of other things need to be in the right place, working in a certain way for digital advertising to be really effective. So very simple takeaway on this one. Number 2, bad choices, is take the time, invest the time and the energy and maybe a bit of money in building a solid strategy and ultimately making the right choices, making good choices. Okay, number 3, channel management, or more specifically, poor channel management. And at JDS, I often feel we have this perception that we are anti-retail, that we believe every brand should sell every one of their products through their own website or maybe through a marketplace, and that just simply isn't true. We are big believers in retail, and we believe for most brands in most categories, retail, physical retail as well as online retail, so Argos website, John Lewis website, Waitrose, etc. They all play a really important role, both in reaching and selling to your customers, being competitive, so stealing share from your competitors, but also from a brand perspective, giving your products availability both physically and mentally, and that's going to help build and scale your brand. So we are absolute believers in retail. They have a place in most brand plans. But for direct to consumer, then the objective should be for everything you do through this channel, be it new or recently launched, wherever you are on your journey, it should be incremental from a sales perspective, but if not sales, definitely from a profit perspective. And then what does that mean for your tactical planning? Do your current product and price, does your current product and pricing, work through a direct-to-consumer channel? Is that the same as retail? The promotions that you run or the campaigns that you plan and implement, do they work in the same way? And if they do they need to be slightly adjusted for each channel? Or how do they sort of work together to create a result that's bigger than the sum of the parts? And then finally is the role of marketplaces. Now, marketplaces is almost a sub-channel of direct-to-consumer if you're using them in a seller capacity. But you don't really want to be selling loads of volume through Amazon if you can help it, for example, because they charge extortionate fees and you lose some control of the experience and the customer. So how do you create a sort of a broad channel plan that is pushing products and enticing customers to the right places, both broadly across your total business, but also just in the world of direct to consumer, including marketplaces? Really important. So just again, very simple takeaway is take a step back and make sure that direct to consumer forms part of a much broader business and channel plan. Don't just go off and do it in a silo or in isolation. It needs to form part of a more considered approach across the entire business. Number 4, not knowing the customer. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this before from a slightly broader marketing strategy perspective, and that's absolutely fundamental to this. That's sort of above direct to consumer. You need to have your core marketing strategy in place first. But when we come into direct to consumer, knowing who the customer is and why they buy, specifically the online customer, because you might find it's quite a different person to those that are buying through your retail network, is really, really important. So just some basic pointers here. Demographic profiles. Where do they live? How much do they earn? What type of house do they live in? How old are they? Just very simple demographics, but also the psychographics is what's driving them from a personality perspective to make purchases within your category. And then linked to that is what are the specific triggers that go off in the customer's mind that bring them into the market? So that might be their vacuum breaks, so they need a new one. Or it might be that they've moved house and they suddenly need to invest in paint and paintbrushes and decorative products. Or it might be that the sun starts to shine, the grass starts to grow, and they realize that they need, a lawnmower and a strimmer and a new hose because the hose is too kinked. These are the triggers, the things that happen in a customer's lifestyle that bring them into a market. And that's even more important for direct to consumer because, as I've already said, direct to consumer is a channel. And a channel matters when a customer's in market. And what you're trying to do is, and by knowing the customer, this is easier, you're trying to distract or drag that customer off the journey that they were already on, Googling, going to a retailer website and buying, and you're trying to disrupt that and bring them to your website, or if they're already there, simply convert them on your website to buy directly from you. And that's why it's really important that you understand this at a more granular level, even if you think you already understand it at a broader marketing and brand level. So very simple takeaway here. Simplicity is everything from my perspective. Understand your customer and use it to drive all activities. And there's some really easy places to start with. It's Google Analytics. Even if you have a website that's being tracked by Google Analytics, will give you some basic information on this. And getting a very simple data profile will only cost you, a couple of £1,000. You'll get that back tenfold with how much insight it will give you for changes going forward. And then finally, number 5, no visible value proposition. So we're getting a little bit more specific now and a little bit more into the detail, into the tactics. But it surprises me, honestly, still how many brands don't publish this on their website. And ultimately what this means is, why should a customer buy from you versus your competitors, but also buy from you directly versus buying from one of your stockists or from another sales outlet? And the first thing to highlight here is if you're not selling direct to consumer currently, the first thing you need to do is just get the basics right. Offer a competitive delivery, both speed and cost. Offer a simple returns process. Offer pre-sale live chat and easy ways for customers to get in touch with you and customer services. You just need to get the online retail basics right first and foremost. But then if you want to try and entice more customers to buy directly from you, you can think about added value. Do you offer extra guarantees? Do offer extra guarantee on your products, or offer add-ons like accessories pack or bundles pack that mean you're not leading the market on price, because we never suggest you do that. We believe in retail, and that's one way to really annoy retail very quickly. But you do want people to be buying from you. So what can you do that adds value without jeopardizing the broader retail landscape? And then exclusive product. I mean, that's a slightly bigger, more strategic point. Is, are the customers different, and thus do the product specs need to be slightly different? But using exclusive product on a website is something we've seen work really well. So again, simple takeaway: define your why buy and make it visible everywhere, not just on your homepage. Put it on every single page of your website. Put it in your emails, on your purchase orders, on your delivery notes. So customers time and time again are being reminded of why they should buy directly from you. This is even more important if you're in a high turnover category. So where the product life cycle is short, because they're buying more frequently. You want them coming back to you. And also, if you don't have to pay to acquire that customer, it's an even cheaper way of selling more. So good for the P&L. So that's the takeaway on this one. Okay, final section. What can you do next? If any of those points have resonated with you, and you think that maybe a couple of them apply, and what should we do, and how can we move forward, particularly in such a volatile market as we find ourselves in now? The first thing I must stress is that one size does not fit all. And I'm sure some of you follow influencers on LinkedIn. You might even follow me, or you subscribe to our emails. But just because people like me or other agency owners or influencers are saying to do a certain thing doesn't necessarily make it right for your business. Every business within every market is different. So take the advice, of course, but make sure that there's a bit of time spent translating that into what's right for you, because just trying to apply what everybody else does is a surefire way to failure, and it will be very, very expensive. So just make sure that you understand the nuance that is applying advice and theory and practice into your business. But what we would suggest medium to short term, as you've probably got a feel for already, is just taking a step back and doing a bit of a diagnosis as to where you are right now. And that would include, very simply, getting access to market trends, some of which we've talked about earlier in the presentation. How big are your markets? Where are those markets distributed? How much of it's online? Is there a big enough opportunity for you to invest in it there? All these very basic sort of market research points. We've already talked about the customer, but doing some very basic customer research. Analyze your commercials, create a direct-to-consumer P&L. So many people don't have this, or still don't do it. They have no idea how much money they're making selling direct-to-consumer. And it's often a lot less than they initially think, because they haven't factored accordingly for single pick, pack and ship, returns, customer service costs, extra packaging. There's all these things that need to be factored for. And if you don't know where you are now, you cannot improve it. You cannot plan. So do that analysis. And if you don't have one, build a direct to consumer P&L. Analyze your e-commerce analytics. We're going to come on to that in a second. There's a slightly shorter term opportunity for you to do straight after today. And then finally, review your competence internally. Do you have the right people, the right structure? Do some of the existing team need training? Do you need to hire new people? Just make sure you've got the right operational competence in place to take you to where you want to get to. Because for most brands, direct to consumer should pretty quickly become your biggest customer, if you think of it like that. And thus just giving this to existing team members on top of already very heavy workloads is not going to get you where you want to be very quickly. So doing that internal, more people, process and technology review will really help you make the right choices. And that's really what this is about. Spend the time, a couple of weeks, maybe a bit longer, collect this data, map it on a whiteboard, and very quickly you'll start to spot the opportunities that are going to give you the greatest return in the shortest amount of time, the insights. And that's going to help you make much better choices and prioritize accordingly. And then more short term, because I'm sure some of you are a little bit less patient and want to be able to just go and do something straight away. So I'm going to focus in on the world of e-commerce now, e-commerce optimization specifically. And I'm going to start with a little bit of theory that to everyone I tell this to is pretty revolutionary in how they view their website, because e-commerce is very simple. It's made up of 3 key metrics that drive revenue. And those are traffic. So how many people are coming to your website? If you times that number by conversion rate, so how many of those people that come buy? So let's use a hypothetical example. Let's say you have 100 people visit your website in one day and one of them buys. That gives you a 1% conversion rate. And if you then multiply that by the average amount spent by each customer, that is revenue. That's the revenue that you are driving on your website. And thus, if you're able to understand these numbers, you're then able to prioritize where you need to put attention to quicker. Because if we use the conversion rate percentage example again, if you've got a 1% conversion rate and then you make a couple of changes and you now got a 1.5% conversion rate, that doesn't feel like very much, right? 1% to 1.5, but that actually increases your revenue by 50%. 50% just by making some changes to tweak your conversion rate up 0.5. And it's the same with traffic. It's the same with average order value. If you double any one of these metrics, you double revenue. And understanding where you are versus benchmarks, competitors, market averages, trended over time is a really good place. Actually, it's the only place to start when you're trying to optimize your website, your e-commerce website. Now, this will be, again, different for each of you, subject to where you are in your journey. But for most brands, they should start with conversion rate optimization. So take conversion as the metric that you're trying to improve and focus all your attention there for a number of weeks or months. And that might be providing better content, making the user experience more slick so there's less clicks to buy. It might be having a look at your pricing and promotions and making sure that you're competitive but not leading versus retail. It might be the value proposition bar that we talked about, making sure that you've got a solid value proposition that's published all over your website. All of these things will help increase your conversion rate and thus increase revenue. And the best part is most of this is free. So particularly at the moment when media inflation is so high and most brands are struggling to get a decent return on ad spend, focusing your efforts on things that are free in inverted commas, because you might have to spend a bit of money on content or some other things, is a pretty sensible place to start. And that's where we'd advise you start from today. If you've completely maximized every opportunity in conversion rate, which is very difficult, but you might have done it, then move on to basket size optimization. So average order value, trying to get customers to spend a little bit more every time they purchase from your website. That might be encouraging them to trade up to the higher end model. It might be encouraging them to buy another product alongside the product that they're buying from a different category on your website. It might be encouraging them to buy accessories and the checkout page and more add-ons as they go through. There's a whole host of opportunities within this. Now, This might cost you a little bit of money in technology and additional integrations onto your website, depending on what platform that you're on, but your web agency will be able to tell you that pretty quickly. But usually this is a pretty sound investment if you're not doing a huge amount here to try and move that number upwards. And then finally, if you've exhausted the first two, you can start to have a look at traffic, customer acquisition and retention. Now, I've already mentioned it a few times that media inflation, the cost per click inflation we're seeing through Google and Facebook at the moment is unprecedented, and it's making return on ad spend very difficult for a lot of brands. Having said that, if you haven't ever done any paid search or paid social, it's definitely worth testing if you're happy the first two are in a good enough place. They don't have to be perfect, but good enough to convert the traffic that you're paying for. But start small. Don't start spending thousands or tens of thousands of pounds straight away. Spend a couple of hundred or low thousands, see what the performance is like. And if the return on ad spend is good enough that you're making additional profit based on the advertising, start to scale it slowly. The other thing I wanted to mention in traffic is because of all the changes we're seeing in the world of digital advertising, first-party data and cheaper marketing channels, things like email, we believe are going to become even more important over the medium to long term. And if you haven't got email marketing and a plan in place for acquiring data and then marketing and messaging valuable content to that data, that group of customers, and ultimately potentially selling to them, then you're missing a trick. And this would be something we encourage you to do quite quickly, is get someone to have a look at a couple of options in terms of tools. There's lots out there. They're not hugely expensive, and get on with building your own first party list of customer data until the volatility and chaos of digital advertising settles down and makes the costs a little bit more acceptable and possible for brands. We believe things like email, affiliates, partner marketing, things that are less pay-per-click based and more around owning the data or working with partners that own the data. We believe that's going to be a big growth area and something that you should definitely be investigating if you're not already. We do these wonderful webinars with Beta, but we're also doing lots of content, articles, thought pieces, frameworks through our other channels. So go and follow us on LinkedIn. Check out our website. We've got an Our Thoughts section where we publish all of our content, and also go and join our email subscriber list. If you go to our website, wait 10 seconds, 15 seconds, there'll be a little pop-up. Just pop your email in there and you'll be included in our emails. And we send a couple out a month, one more of a thought piece on a particular topic, and then we send a slightly larger piece that includes frameworks and other resources that you can use all around the world of strategy and direct to consumer.